This video will basically explore the non-price determinants of demand and see how changes in those determinants of demand will affect the demand for a product. So, in the previous video, we explained the law of demand. Just to remind you, we said that ceteris paribus, as the price of a product falls, the quantity demanded of that product will usually increase. Now, the key to understanding the non-price determinants of demand is to look at this assumption, ceteris paribus. So, what are those factors that we assume are held constant? Because that's what ceteris paribus means. Well, these are the non-price determinants of demand. These are the factors that also affect demand other than price. The only difference is that they actually shift the whole demand curve. So what are these factors? Let's take a look. I mentioned that the non-price determinants of demand, when they change, they actually shift the demand curve. So let's take a look at what the diagram would look like. Well, if there's a change in a non-price determinant that causes an increase in demand, this would cause an upward or a rightward shift of the demand curve from D to D1. So when demand increases, basically, it shifts outwards or it shifts to the right. And the opposite is true. A decrease in demand would be represented by a downward or leftward shift of the demand curve. So when demand decreases, it shifts to the left. Now remember, these are the non-price determinants of demand. When they change, they either increase or decrease demand. An increase in demand is represented by a shift to the right of the demand curve. A decrease in demand is represented by a shift to the left. So, the first of these non-price determinants of demand is income. Basically, when income changes, this causes a change in demand. The change itself will depend on whether we're talking about normal goods or inferior goods. If the good itself is a normal good, basically an increase in income will cause an increase in demand. And a decrease in income will cause a decrease in demand. So an increase in income will shift the demand curve to the right. A decrease in income will shift the demand curve to the left. Unless it's an inferior good. So basically, inferior goods are goods that we only buy when our income is low. For example, public transport is considered an inferior good. When people have enough money to purchase a car, they might decrease their demand for public transport. So, inferior goods, the opposite happens. When income increases, demand decreases, so the demand curve shifts to the left. When income decreases, demand increases, so the demand curve shifts to the right. Changes in the tastes and preferences of people can also cause an increase or a decrease in demand and can actually shift the demand curve. Fashion and trends, for example, if something becomes in fashion or becomes quite trendy, this might increase the demand, so the demand curve for that product might shift to the right. Advertising campaigns can also affect the tastes and preferences of people. A successful advertising campaign will increase the demand for the product. The demand curve for that product will shift to the right. Government policy can also affect the tastes and preferences of people. If the government is trying to launch an awareness campaign about the harmful effects of smoking, if this awareness campaign is successful, it will shift the demand curve for cigarettes to the left because there will be a decrease in demand. So remember, changes in tastes and preferences also affect the demand for a product. The third non-price determinant we're going to look at is the prices of related goods. So how are goods related? Well, goods can be substitutes or complements. Let's have a look at substitutes like Pepsi and Coca-Cola. If Pepsi is more expensive because the price of Pepsi rises, we assume, ceteris paribus, the price of Coca-Cola hasn't changed. So now Pepsi is more expensive, consumers will switch to the cheaper substitute. And so you would expect the demand for Coca-Cola to increase. as a result of that change in the price of Pepsi. What about cars, Ford and Chevrolet? If Fords are cheaper, so the price of Ford falls, you would expect the demand for Chevrolet, which is a close substitute, to decrease as a result of that change in the price of Ford. So the prices of related goods, when they change, they can actually affect the demand of the good that you're looking at. Another relationship between goods is complements. For example, cars and petrol, goods that you often consume together. If cars are more expensive, so the price of cars rises, less people would buy cars, or so therefore you would expect the demand for petrol to decrease. Similarly, tea and milk. If the price of tea falls, so tea is cheaper, people will drink more tea, and because they are complements, that can often lead to an increase in the demand for milk. So changes in the prices of related goods will also affect the demand of the product in question. Changes in the population, so what we refer to as demographic changes, will also change demand. Obviously, if the population size grows, so the size of the population grows, you would expect the demand for most products to increase. Also, population structure. Say, for example, right now we live in an aging society where people are living longer, healthier lives. So you have an increase in the number of people above a certain age, and the number of retired people, for example, that would increase the demand for products that are only consumed by retired people, like, say, retirement homes or retirement funds. So changes in the population, whether size or structure, will affect the demand for different products. Some products are also affected by seasonal changes. So during religious holidays like Easter, for example, there's an increase in the demand for Easter eggs or Easter bunnies, the chocolates. School holidays as well. So towards the end of school holidays, there's a massive increase in the demand for stationery because people are buying stationery for their kids returning to school. So some products are also affected by changes in the seasons. Now, it's very important to understand the difference between movements along the demand curve and shifts of the demand curve. Remember, movements along the demand curve will only happen when we are talking about changes in price. So changes in price will cause movements along the demand curve, and here we say that there's been a change in the quantity demanded. If it's a movement along, we say that the quantity demanded has changed. We don't say that the demand has changed. Changes in any of the non-price determinants, so all the other determinants that we explained in this video, well, they cause shifts of the whole demand curve. If a non-price determinant causes demand to increase, we would expect the demand curve to shift to the right. If a change in a non-price determinant causes the demand to decrease, we would expect the demand curve to shift to the left. Here we say there is a decrease or increase in demand. You can say there's a change in demand, not just a change in quantity demanded. So remember, if the price of the good changes, it only causes a movement along the demand curve, which we say the quantity demanded has changes. If any of the non-price determinants change, they cause shifts of the demand curve, and we say that this has caused either an increase or a decrease in demand.